Hello, this is Scott at Aquascape ATX. Right now it's the end of January 2026, and as I had figured, we didn't get a freeze here in Austin until late January. So I've been harvesting a whole bunch of tomatoes, radishes, beets, kale. The list kind of goes. A lot of really good fall, winter type veggies that we've been really enjoying. But now I have to pay the piper. The freeze came, so it knocked out a lot of the plants. So I thought I'd walk you around and show you the little status on my aquaponics. So I guess we'll proceed. Before we jump in the aquaponics, I'll show you the conventional gardens here. I have, like I mentioned, been really enjoying the kale and beets and radishes. There's a bunch of onions, green onions we've been harvesting. And then there's, which the onions I'm hopeful may survive. We had a couple cabbages that, been fighting cabbage worms on them. So questionable on those. Most everything else in there seems about fried out. Most of the beds froze out, not surprising because I didn't really put any row covers around any veggies. It was going down to I think 20 for several nights in a row and a ton of ice, and I just kind of figured what was the point. I did harvest some radishes that been cooking and drying and made into sauces. Like I said, I've been harvesting a ton of tomatoes, which now are dead, but I had a good 2-3 months of harvest, really late November through the freeze. Made a lot of tapenades and things. As far as the fish, so far I've noticed one tilapia that kind of slowed down and stopped breathing, so I took him out, or her out probably. I think it was most likely a female that had a bunch of egg sacs, so it was just, a lot of stress already, and with the cold on top of that stress probably did her in. And I've lost one shrimp, I've noticed. Other than that, everything seems fine. And of course, the bass would not be a problem. It's really the tilapia and the shrimp thing to be sensitive to it. So you can see, several things have died out. These are fava beans. I was hoping that the fava beans would survive the freeze, but it's looking like they did not. And all my radishes and things in here, tomatoes are done. On water tests, it'd be a good idea to run water tests. Now the thing I'm going to be fighting is I don't have a nitrate sink because most of my plants are gone. So I thought it would be prudent to run a water profile. And the pH has been holding fairly decent. I've still been adding water and adding acid, kind of keep that in check. The next one there is the ammonias, which is yellow, which is good. The nitrites is the far one, which is a light blue, which means it's negligible. And then predictably, the one that's high is the nitrates, because there is no nitrate sink, i.e. plants sucking the nitrogen out of the aquaponics water. So until I get my garden grown up a little bit, which I can't really start working on that till next week, because we're still fighting. We still have some 20 lows of 25 this weekend, so it'd be kind of pointless to put anything in. I do have some tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant plants that I kept in a heated, used to be old wine cellar, but I got tired of fixing the HVAC in it, so now it's just a mushroom room or a gardening room. So that's where that's working. I guess what else? Oh, so I did cover a lot of tanks with plastic. You can see the one behind me here. I covered the bed and about half the tank. That's the biggest tank. We switch sides here. The other one, or these ponds down here, are covered with plastic. At one point, it got into the high 40s, and I do have a hot water loop, which I've not really talked about this yet. But I have, you can see the piping here. There's hot water flowing in a loop that goes to stainless heat exchangers in the tanks. And that goes to a inline hot water heater I have down by the house. So I'm pumping it pretty far in through PEX pipe, and when it's certainly down to the 30s, it's working pretty good. Typically what you'll see, which I guess is not ideal for fish, is it'll go up and down. It goes up with the sunshine during the day and cools off a little bit at night. But mostly I've been keeping things in the 60s and 70s through this winter with that system, so that's been pretty good. Of course, it gets to 20 in the freezing rain and sleet. That really hammered it pretty hard, and that's why we got down into those low or high 40s. And just for reference, tilapia, especially it's the Mozambique tilapia that I'm using, that they're basically, when temperatures get below 50 for very long, they're going to start dying off because they just can't take it that cold. The the blue Nile tilapias will go down in the 40s. So, tilapia are kind of a mixed bag. They're a very friendly fish. They're kind of fun. They move around a lot. Where bass just tend to hide. They're kind of very reclusive. And the tilapia are nice for eating algae and stuff, and they breed like crazy, but they don't take the cold. So unless you have a greenhouse. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to talk about. I think my next aquaponics system, if we move to a larger property, I'm just going to build a greenhouse. I think it's trying to heat these open tanks in the Austin winter is almost pointless. I think if you're going to do an open setup like I have here, I would just steer away from the tilapia. Maybe throw some goldfish in there for taking care of the algae, and not mess around with tilapia. So unless you're in a temperature-controlled environment like a greenhouse, I would recommend against tilapia. You could play with the blue Nile tilapia. They're not theoretically, I believe they are illegal to own without a permit in the state of Texas, and that's due to their cold tolerance, that they would consider them invasive. The Mozambique, typically, unless they have a heat source, like maybe a cooling plant next to a nuke plant or something like that, they're not going to make the winter in Texas, at least not in high quantities. They don't consider them as invasive, so you're allowed to use them. Either way, for my system, it's not really an issue, because there's really no way for a tilapia, unless I guess I carried one, but if my tanks overflow, the tilapia are just going to die in my lawn. It's not like they're going to get washed down into the Colorado River, through Bull Creek or something. So I guess that's about it. I thought it'd be fun. It's a little depressing looking at all the dead plants, but I did want to highlight, I was kind of excited that we made it through January, so I would encourage everyone to think about fall gardens in Central Texas, because they do work pretty good, and you do get a lot of really good food that you typically would not think of getting, like your kales and cabbages and all that. And even I think about in the fall doing tomatoes, because chances are you got to baby them through the heat in September, but once you get past that, now you have a really good tomato growing season. And we had so many, it was the Cherokees I grew, which are typically tough to do in aquaponics. They tend to crack really easy, but I just kept an eye on them, and when the tomatoes started turning just a little pink, I would pick them and let them finish up in the window. And so I've got a ton of really good, and the flavor of the Cherokees are just, they are unmatched by any other tomato. I think they're like the best tomato out there. I have some other ones here, like the Surefires and some baby or better bushes, and in the fall at least, they've just been really mealy and very unattractive. They're just not that great at tomato. But the Cherokee has just been shining. So definitely a tough tomato to grow in aquaponics. You got to be very careful of the cracking. But I think as a fall tomato, at least, I think I'm willing to try it again. So I'm going to do a quick follow-on to the winter freeze video on the garden. So I thought I'd walk you around. This is now February 26th, so almost a month after the freeze. We only had that one freeze this year, so I'll turn around and walk you through things. As I mentioned before, I thought the onions and the leeks would make it, and they did. They're growing along here. The other thing that survived that freeze is the mint. It kind of browned on the tip some, but I just kind of cut that part back and replanted it. And then those are dianthus that are still growing up from seed. I put in the peppers. You can see them here. We've had several. There's a bunch of little ones like that size. There's some eggplant over there. Those are all post-freeze. I put those all in a couple weeks ago, and since we've had a lot of cold nights, they're kind of struggling a little bit. There's some grande peppers as well. They will struggle till it gets hot. Any cold night below 40, they're kind of unhappy about it. Chives, of course, chives live through anything. Some new onions added there. The ones in the back there are onions that made it through the freeze. Leeks that made it through the freeze. Sage here. You can see some of the tops turn brown, but it's growing back underneath just fine. And I've planted some more seeds of things. I've added some flowers from the nursery. We've harvested 3 or 4 of the cabbages so far this year. More chives have made it through. These are Brussels sprouts that I planted post-freeze. The spinach made it through the freeze. More onions. They all made it through the freeze. Up here, so as I mentioned, most things died back. I think everything you see out in this bed is post-freeze. The fava beans, a couple of them grew back from the roots, some of them did not, or like I say, most of them did not. The tomato plants are ones that I had grown in our wine cellar under grow lights, and I was moving them in and out as I had a warm day, I put them outside. But as soon as I put in the aquaponics here, they took off, and this is a better bush variety. So far, they're really happy this spring. I don't know if you can see the fish swimming around, the goldfish and tilapia, all having a good time. Tilapia are all mating now, so they're all kind of aggressive, chasing each other. The post-freeze, so the Swiss chard and the beets, these up here came back because they're a little bit warmer. The ones I had down in the conventional beds did not. One cool thing about aquaponics and with the heat is set up to have here, a lot of cool things, but one thing kind of fun to mention is in your springtime, your late winter plantings, things like, here you can see a cucumber I just stuck in the soil, cucumber seeds. And this one over here is a squash, tantrum squash. That's a poinsettia 76, I believe. And here's more of my famous, if you guys watched it in the past, the Trombosino squashes. So the thing in the aquaponics is since I'm heated, my beds are much warmer, and so the soil is actually warmer too. So everything I've planted here in the last 2-3 weeks is you can hear the bass over there. I don't know if you can hear them. The feeder went off. They're going crazy. Kind of fun. Watch the feed. And tilapia. There's bass and tilapia in there. These fava beans over here were under that plastic, so those bounced back. And this is all maybe 3 weeks old, so it's growing pretty fast with the heat. The dianthus, I had different flowers in here. I'm trying to remember the name of them. Vincas, I think. They were overflowing the top. Those all froze back. I pulled them and planted as dianthus, but they've already taken off. You can see all the new growth on those. So I think they're going to like that location. Those dianthus seeds, those ones there under the green slide in the shade were pre-freeze, and they made it through the freeze fine. Oh, they slowed down a little bit, I guess. I mentioned Cherokee tomatoes earlier. That I guess I had 1 tomato plant that dropped here, and you can see there's some volunteers coming up. It's kind of cool. And these are nasturtiums. So I'm hoping these are going to grow over the edge and flower. And you can actually add the leaves and the flowers into salads. And they're just really fun to look at. I like them as a trailing flower. And you can see these are kale. These are beets. This different variety of kale. And those are arugula, like roquette arugula. Then there's fava beans going up on the sides. So just kind of a quick overview of things after a month after the freeze. And so there was a period there where it looked pretty bleak for a week or two, but really, and I'd say this is fairly typical for Austin winters. We have one blue northerner that'll come in and really drive the temperature down to 20. And we had Snowmageddon back 3-4 years ago. It took it down to, I think, 5 or 10 degrees at one point Fahrenheit. So that was a really hard freeze. But typically, it's pretty nice like this all winter long. Maybe now it's getting a little warmer. We get up in the 80s, but overall, you can do a lot of good winter gardening, especially things like cabbages and the kales. They will tolerate those little freezes. Now the 20-degree freeze, that was too much for them. But if you get like it goes down to 30 at night or 28 or 27. Most of those winter type vegetables and herbs will pass right through that without a problem. Maybe especially if you put a row cover on it, it'll help even more. So I guess that's a quick walkthrough after a month after the freeze. So we should be enjoying more veggies here soon. If you like the video, please click the like and subscribe. That helps my metrics. And happy gardening.